And hello once again, all of the Spiritist community. This is Luis Lima once again from Central Florida for Kardec Radio and Spiritism A Closer Look, our weekly program. We are covering this first topic, evolution. By the way, this is our program number 25. Not only that, it's the last one in the series, Evolution. For 25 weeks, as you know, if you have been following us, we have been talking about so many things just because evolution is such a wide and broad subject, not only within spiritism, but in general. Right? Even if you want to talk about just animals and plants and whatever else comes with it, it's a long, broad subject. So we took these initial 25 weeks to discuss the issue, and we're going to wrap up today. So today what I wanted to do is just go through what we have seen in brief words, just really an overview of what we saw and discussed through all this time. So we divided evolution in 14 modules, or just call them chapters. So 14 chapters. And I'm going to just briefly touch on each one of them, what we did in each one of them. They are, by the way, they are all recorded. You can get to all of them. There are numbers. You can get to all of them via Kardec Radio or Facebook, Spiritism A Closer Look. They're all in there for you to go back and review, or if you haven't seen yet, you're always welcome to participate by, watching them. Okay, so program number 1, we spoke about the theories of evolution. And in there, we discussed two major, or let's just call them basic ideas about evolution. One is creationism, in which there is no evolution. That's the church version, per se, in easy words. And evolution itself, an evolutionary line of thought where things happen after another. So there is one species that transforms into another, and a lot of things like that. In here, we discussed Darwin, which is, by the way, one of the great names in the history of humanity. Such a brilliant man, devoted to his cause, which was to study the species, and he was just one of these great names in history. Another one that we mentioned was Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Another one that brought us a slightly different theory of evolution in comparison to Darwin's. And we came to the conclusion that none of them is really wrong. It's not a matter of being right or wrong. It's a matter of being which criteria are these men and any other of those who dove into these fields. So what is the criterion? And then we made it clear on this first module, first chapter, Theories of Evolution, where Spiritism stands. These men, Darwin, Lamarck, and others, they are concentrating their work. Their line of work is understanding species, how one plant might have generated another one, and so through mutations, and same for animals, different species of animals, one might have come from another. So it's all about mutation, but still all in the physical, material plane. Spiritism goes beyond that. Spiritism, so Darwin and Lamarck are, from the Spiritist point of view, not complete, because they don't look into the Spiritist or the spirit world, which is the other side. We do. So Spiritism thrives for its effort in studying the evolution of the intelligent principle. So we defined all of those things. Intelligent principle, actually, that was done on chapter 2, the creation. So we showed and discussed the elements of evolution. We discussed things such as spiritual principle, material principle, universal cosmic fluid, all of these things. So we spend probably like 3 or 4 weeks speaking about this because it is such an important thing. And I see one of our listeners here, Fabius, you say you have a question. So please post your question and we're going to go through it. So chapter number 3. So we presented the elements of creation. Then on chapter number 3, we introduced the idea of the vital principle. Vital principle is what makes inert or inorganic matter to be converted into organic matter. And that's, of course, there was an extensive explanation because there's a lot of details. But for what we need today, it was we tried to show, to portray how this intelligent principle acquired the ability to infuse life into inorganic matter or inert matter. Okay, so the vital principle. Then we went to the next chapter, the earth. About the earth, we had to speak about the evolution of the planet in 2 worlds, literally. The physical formation of the planet coming from what is considered the starting point, the Big Bang. So we came from there through a series of, through a timeline, if you will, until we get to the present time. So all of the things that happen, all of the formation of the planets, solar system, until the formation of the Earth and its readiness for receiving human incarnations on its soil. Then we also, in this chapter, the earth, we also spoke about the spiritual layers of the planet. 12 spiritual layers of the planet, what they mean for us living on earth, what they mean for those discarnate, waiting for their next opportunity to come on board and get going on their evolutionary path. So we discussed, I would say in pretty fair details, the spiritual layers of the planet. Then we went to chapter number 5, next one up, the kingdoms. And then we discussed everything on about the minerals, plants, animals, humans, and how things are all connected. There's a connection, that unites all of these things. There's a better than a connection, a better word might have been coordination. There's a coordination. There's a group of highly evolved spirits taking care of all of these things, making it all happen and make sure things happen right and as they were supposed to be. So the kingdoms address exactly that: minerals, plants, animals, humans. Then we went to the next one up, which we call the next chapter, we call the races. Races was the purpose of that chapter was, once we had the kingdoms and we got all the way up to the humans, was to explain once human incarnations are going to take place on earth, that's not a snap of a fingers. Men or humans can't come on board and that's it. No, it's a process, and it starts from using a more, I would say, modern term. It comes all the way from the caveman to the modern humans, and it's a long process, full of details, full of nuances, if you will. So we start all the way down 200,000 years ago, even prior to that. And when we had living on Earth, the Neanderthal, right? They were here for several, about 150,000 years or so. And then they were, if you will, in quotes, replaced with a more modern type, which is us, originally called Cro-Magnon. Science, for several different reasons that, it's not our purpose to discuss, but they don't use that name anymore. They did in the past, several decades ago, Cro-Magnon. So these Cro-Magnon, they replaced the Neanderthal in terms of a better physical body, a more robust physical body, more erect and less humanoid, if you will, or anthropoid. We compared the two a little bit. We are descendants of Cro-Magnon, so we have our brain is much more developed than the brain of the Neanderthal, and we explain how that happened and why, and there's a purpose to all of that. So that was chapter number 6, races. Then we went to the next one, chapter, the intelligent principle. Very interesting. What we do here on this chapter, what we did here on this chapter is to, once we understood what the intelligent principle was, that was discussed on chapter number 2. So once we understood what the intelligent principle was, we go into a journey, a beautiful journey on how it develops, how it applies its growing, everyday growing knowledge to the organic matter by forming from the very most elementary forms of life into the more complex forms of life. Today is us, humans. How this intelligent principle interacts with organic matter to make things happen for its own evolutionary path towards perfection. And then how this intelligent principle tweaks the what we call this perispirit on every single level until we, and it's a long journey, until we were able to get to where we are. So this chapter, the intelligent principle, explains, if we could summarize in one word or a few words, is the evolution of the perispirit. And then we went to the next one, evolution of the brain. Evolution of the brain was very interesting. We had we invited our great friend Vanessa Anceloni to be a part of this. We had a live discussing the 3 layers of the brain and the brain in general, right? In focusing on evolution. So we spoke about the reptilian brain, the intermediate brain, frontal lobe, all of those things, and how it all happened. And we still have a lot of the reptilian brain, which is the first layer. We still use it a lot. All the tasks that are automated into our body and perispirit, for example, digestion, heartbeating, breathing, we don't have to stop and think to do these things. They just happen because the process has been automated. And it's something that the perispirit had to learn. Okay? All right, so we're going to continue here before we can answer Fabio's question. And then we went to the next one up, reincarnation. Reincarnation shows, this chapter shows the process of reincarnating several times, which of course is part of evolution. We need that. That's actually a requirement. We can say it's a requirement for us to grow morally, life after life after life, and get going towards perfection. So we explain how the incarnation takes place, what happens at, when the incarnation starts, when it concludes, all of that. Very interesting chapter, by the way, at least for me. Then we went to chapter number 10, intellectual progress. Intellectual progress discussed not only progress as we know, meaning technological progress and things that we didn't have 200 years ago, we have now, things that we didn't have 4,000 years ago. For example, fire, the invention of the wheel, these are things from 3500 BC or even prior to that, and they're still around. So we acquire progress, intellectual progress, and we use it in our favor. And the whole purpose of learning intellectual progress is to give us elements so we can make better choices, so we can morally be better. And that was exactly the last chapter, chapter 11, moral evolution. And moral evolution, by the way, is actually the core of Spiritism. That's what Spiritism is all about, explaining how evolution of humankind. That's exactly what they, what we should be concentrating on, evolution of the soul, the intelligent principle. Especially in the last chapter, we show how that happens in terms of moral. Let's go back here to our friend Fabius. He has a question here. And the question is, I'm going to read it to you. Do you believe spirits can teach us so that can live better in the world? If what is the best method to contact them? Okay, so let's do in parts. So first of all, if I believe spirits can teach us, right? That's by the way what Spiritism came for. Spiritism comes to us through a series of events that we are going to explain later on our next modules. But it comes to us from mediumship, which is the ability to communicate with the other side, with discarnate spirits. So as the process develops, Allan Kardec, which is the codifier of Spiritism, he learns how to ask questions to the spirits in a very knowledgeable way, very smart questions, one after the other. And when he compiles everything to a book, the Spirit's book, it all makes sense. But all that information came to us from the spirit world. So can they teach us something? Yes, that's what Spiritism is all about, is to teach us what the spirits are telling us, because they have been to the other side. They are on the other side. They can tell us how it is because we can't see it here as incarnates. And Fabius, on the second part of your question, what is the best method to contact them? I wouldn't put it this way exactly, but the way to contact them is mediumship. Right? You have to have some psychic ability, some mediumistic ability, and to make this thing serious. Okay, to make this thing serious, and I would say, to invest the energy in doing this and obtaining return in terms of being a better person, that requires a lot of study. In spirit centers, we do this. By the way, the Allan Kardec's Codification has an entire book about it. The book, the Medium's book, which is, by the way, it's a thick book, and it was written in 1861. And by the way, it's still considered to this day to be the best book, the more complete book on the subject. 160 years after its publication, still the best one. But that's not only it. It's not just reading the book or reading 2 or 3 books. It's a process that has to be really understood. Spiritist centers, most of them, at least, maybe not so much because of the pandemic, but most Spiritist centers have courses and classes in mediumship, mediumistic communications, or anything in that sense. And so I really urge you to look for that kind of thing in Spiritist centers. And you're asking me if there's something in South Africa. You can go to the internet, to the site for the International Spiritist Council. They will list all the Spiritist centers around the globe. Okay, so go there, visit the site, just Google it, and you can find it. Okay. All right, so I just gave you a quick overview of what we did in these last 25 weeks. Like I said before, all these programs are recorded. You can get back to them through Kardec Radio, on our Facebook, Spiritism, A Closer Look, Kardec Radio's website, YouTube, Facebook, any of those. So that kind of wraps up this first topic that we picked for our Spiritism A Closer Look. 25 weeks. Wow. Incredible, right? Okay, we're not stopping. We're not stopping. We're going to go to another topic. So we are off next week, but the week after, we start another topic. And then, how do we pick a topic? Well, let me just explain why we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about. Throughout the years, these past 20 some years, by going to different places, by going to different spiritist centers, by speaking to people, by speaking for spiritist audiences, a lot of new people come in, a lot of new people will, after talks and lectures, they will come to us and say, oh, very interesting. So, but, Spiritism started in France. Okay, that's the question that we get all the time. Spiritism started in France. How come it's in the U.S. now? What made it happen? What's the path to get Spiritism out of France into the U.S.? So that's exactly what we are going to do in our next few weeks, in our next programs. Again, we're off next week, but the week after that, we start with Spiritism, A Closer Look from France to the USA. So we are going to explain how Spiritism does this quantum leap, if you will, using modern terms, right? And it shows up in the US one day. Very interesting. There's a lot of, in order for us to explain and you to understand, we need to go a little bit through history of France, history of Brazil, history of the USA. Nothing too heavy because it wouldn't even make sense, but minimum history that makes sense, the explanation makes sense, and it all plugs into how Spiritism made its way into the USA. I think it's going to be very nice. I think it's going to be an interesting topic to discuss. It has been for me, at least, like I said, by talking to people throughout the years. And we really never had the opportunity because it's a long thing to talk about, to discuss. It's hard to give an answer in one or two phrases because it might be all broken explanation. So that's why we decided to take this opportunity that we have with Spiritism A Closer Look through Kardec Radio, and we are going to address this. We kind of foresee about 8 weeks on this program, so 7 to 8 weeks. Let's see how it goes. A lot of it depends on what happens on our live transmissions. We got questions, and sometimes not only questions on live transmissions, but after streaming, people can always go back to our talks and our programs, and they will post questions. They will ask us something. So it all depends on how more or less details we need to get into, so we are able to explain how Spiritism made its way in the USA. So I invite you to continue with us every week here, Spiritism A Closer Look. And again, our new topic, from France to the USA. Be well, be with us, don't miss it. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.